at the end of the day, like when you think about it, would your mom wear vintage clothing?
No idea.
This is a question you guys should ask your parent without saying anything. Be like, do you want to come like thrift shopping with me? And right away you'll have your answer. I mean, I've been around for a really long time. I've really just touched every aspect of the industry. I've like from working in stores to managing to I've done it all. And I think what I'm doing now is actually the most important facet of the industry, or for me, the satisfying of what I've ever done. I'm working for a high-end luxury line. I've worked for a few different ones, but this one, more than anybody, is extremely, extremely focused. And it's funny that you had asked me this, because it's like we're extremely focused, and our mission is really being sustainable, trying to make a change within the high-end world. So when I refer to high-end, I'm referring to like Gucci, Chanel, like all the super luxurious brands. And we're very, very centered about it. And my position in it is, so it's a bit of a new name for it. I don't think that there's many people that do what I do. I'm a product knowledge specialist. So what I do is I actually work with the design team, and I get all the information about what the latest developments are in the sustainable environment in the fashion industry. And then I go and try to talk about it to our accounts that buy our brand, to try to, it's funny because it'll be one of the points, I try to go and change people's vision of what sustainable fashion is, one door at a time. And when I speak of doors, I speak of whether it's an online store, whether I speak of whether it's going to Holt Renfrew or going to Simon's. It's just I go in there and I talk about the collection, and I try to convey the beautiful aspects of benefits of being sustainable versus just being like, this is a pair of jeans and this is really cool. Like we try to do it because people don't care.
Okay, so that sort of covered the first question, which is what kinds of companies have you worked on and what were you doing in them? So that helped. Yeah. So yeah. Now on to our second question. What are the benefits of what we like to call circular economy in the fashion industry?
Okay, do we have like a week? No, we have like a little bit of time. Okay, so, oh my God, an industry-wide circular business model is a really lofty ambition just to get it started and out of the way. So the way in which the value is created in circular systems is radically different than the way it is created in the linear. So I might answer that other question too. In essence, a single garment can create value repeatedly. So basically and this is where it kind of gets important, because through sale and resale, repeated rental, being sold, repaired, returned, and refurbished, and also recycled. So we call it the 6 R's in the industry. So it's basically reducing, recycling, refurbishing, reselling, renting, and repairing. And that's not only for, I imagine, many, many different industries. It's especially centered in the fashion industry and where we're trying to go. So this being said, peer-to-peer, okay, for example, I'm just going to throw some facts at you, which is amazing. So it's more of a generational, huge thing too. The benefits are much more generational. It's really all about your generation that has to live with the mess that was created before. So just for example, peer-to-peer, social shopping, do you guys know Depop?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Depop basically increased 300% year over year since COVID-19. And we're now noticing that shopping for vintage clothing and everything has escalated 60% in your generation since the past few years. Even before the pandemic, it was slowly going, but now it's more than ever. So clearly it kind of rests in your hands, which is super intense, but it is what it is. And, you have to make up for what your parents did. So, like I said, just basically reflecting on this and rising consumer demand for pre-owned purchases is where we are in the fashion industry right now, or where we should be going. in a perfect world. So the advantages of I would say of circular fashion economy is you would have reduced dependency on imported raw materials. There would also be creation of eco-friendly industries and jobs because, you know, there's shifts in the industry. I'll get to that too. There's creation of eco-friendly industries and jobs. So that's amazing because a lot of people are freaking out that, oh, well, the minute that we're going to start being, you know, sustainable, there's not going to be any jobs anymore, because part of being sustainable is not producing as much anymore. But it is going to create jobs, and people are really not paying attention to it. And it's sad, but whatever, we'll get there. Eco-friendly brands benefit from a better public image, even though technically people, and it's so sad that people don't care. They do care when they're like, oh, well, I have a sustainable brand in my store.
Yeah.
It's just the, you know, the image of it all. So there's that. There's also, you know, because it demonstrates a strong and social, like, conscious status. And that's really where our, you know, with like everything that we're like social media and everything, and, you know, all the BLMs, and more than ever, people care about where you stand socially. So there's reduction in environmental damage, obviously, that's caused by resource extraction of our planet. And there was the resource cost, for sure. And there's optimizing manufacturing processes that are good. And finally, at the end, it just basically reduces further negative impact on our planet. And that's really what the end goal is we're doing it for the planet. We're not, or else we wouldn't be changing any of it. And I would say another bonus one, which we're not completely there yet, would be creating innovation, which I think is what humanity is all about. Like, we need to create innovation and go forward, and so forth and so on. So really to kind of hit it, like, rental and resale business models for clothing are what we should be looking at. And clothing collection, sorting, and recycling infrastructures are really where we're really headed. So to give you an idea, just the numbers, like, basically fashion products make up to 10% of humanity's carbon emissions. You guys know this. Like, cotton farming is responsible for 24% of insecticides, like 11% of pesticides. And basically fashion, like, it's so bad, it dries up water sources and pollutes like rivers and streams. And you know that even like in Central Asia, for instance, there's the Aral Sea. And basically another one, it's like they just disappeared two of their main water sources, like completely disappears because cotton farmers were drawing so excessively from like an Amu Daraya and Sir Daraya, to like two beautiful rivers. It's like, just, we buy 2 billion t-shirts globally, all of us, a year, 2 billion, okay? And then basically that's it. So like out of those 2 billion, it's like, to make one t-shirt, it's 2,700 liters of water, which basically is like to make one shirt. So it's like, if you think of all those things, it's insane. And it's like 85% of all textiles go to the dump each year. It's super depressing, basically, whatever. So that pretty much answers, you know, those questions. But there is like beautiful things about the industry and how they're shifting right now more than ever. And I don't know if I'm like deviating of the question, but there's like still, like, enables circularity involves a complex of like web logistics, obviously. And resale transactions are currently like most peer-to-peer, you know, people can't really get into them. It's really hard because it takes a lot of energy to, like, you know, go wash your clothes, photograph, put them on like Depop, like describe the package, send it. So people are not really fully getting into it. And that's really, you know, sad and stuff. But
one, basically to three, we've covered the effects of circular economy and how that sort of helps with a lot of things like Depop, reselling, which helps with that whole circular idea, the cycle of it all. Whereas linear, which is where it's sort of trying to go away from right now, is more just producing, using, and then it goes.
Yeah, linear is, yeah, it's
not
linear is not, it's just not working. And it's like, it's so sad because it's like, it really is all about the circular economy. But at the end of the day, like, when you think about it, would your mom wear vintage clothing?
No idea.
This is a question you guys should ask your parent without saying anything. Be like, do you want to come like thrift shopping with me? And right away you'll have your answer.
Yeah.
And like it's sad because most of our generation is like, ew, like there's so much stigma. There's, it's so gross and it's dirty and it's like for poor people. And it's because their parents had to like, go through stuff. So, but at the end of the day, like and I guess we'll get to that answer eventually. I mean, that question, which is later on, it's like, what would you do if you didn't buy clothes for a year or didn't make clothes for a year? We'll get to that. But definitely there's a major stigma where, I wanted to kind of actually put out too, that there's a few companies that are doing insane things for this environment. Do you guys know Patagonia?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So Patagonia was one of the first ones to ever do this. People were like, oh my God, this is impossible. You're not going to be able to do this. And he did this a while ago. So basically Walmart and Patagonia, which are completely an odd couple, you would never think of those two together because Patagonia means like recycling and climbing and like everything that's like clean and green. And like Walmart, you're like, oh my God, is, plastic and this and that. So basically those two, like the CEO, the CEO, Yvon Chouinard, who is a Québécois, is the founder of Patagonia, and he got together with a CMO who's called John Fleming, and those two got together and basically decided that it was going to be a good idea to kind of like call out all the major CEOs of all these huge companies, and basically they wrote a joint letter like inviting CEOs, that lead global companies in the industry to basically come together and develop an index that would measure the environmental impact on like products. And that's called it's called the SAC. So it's basically Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So that exists now and it's super cool. So basically what they do is they want people they've created this thing called the Higg Index. So HIGG. And which is a tool that basically enables brands, retailers, and facilities of all sizes to basically be super transparent and to really, I guess it's to enable brands like to see their every step of sustainability that they do through their journey of making clothes, to basically accurately measure like and score what they're doing or not. So like this happened in 2011, the first Higg Index came out, and that basically was a huge thing because companies were embarrassed. They didn't want to have to, put out their numbers because you can't really be transparent about your numbers and what you do to other companies, especially in the clothing industry. It's a super catty industry. But then in 2012, they got Nike to kind of jump in. And Nike basically gave them what they already had worked on. And it's so weird because it's like people don't talk about these things. Nike had already worked on what they called Nike Considered Index, which was a huge thing because Nike analyzes and has been doing it, the environmental impact of materials that go into the footwear that they do in apparel. So that was a huge step into going forward. Most companies too, there's a Fédération de la Mode. So Fédération de la Mode is like the higher up of the fashion industry, like for Gucci and everything. And we got a message before COVID hit that we were no longer allowed to use paper in our companies. So all of us were like, what? And they were like, you're not allowed to use paper. We weren't allowed to like use lunch boxes anymore, like have like carton boxes. Everything was like serve. They had to start implementing a lot of rules and regulations. And now in high end, 50% of your clothing now has to be sustainable for you to be able to be part of La Fédération de la Mode. So which is like the highest, thing you can say about yourself. So there's that. So there is like hope kind of thing.
The next question is, how do we style ourselves responsibly and consciously for the environment?
It's so hard because it's like we want to, we're in a world where now, you take a picture with a piece of clothing and like a lot of people, I'm not saying you guys, like a lot of people care about what they wear on like social media. And so it's really hard to kind of, to answer your question, you would have to really try to commit to, buying clothes that actually are timeless. You'd have to invest a bit more because there is mathematics to how to buy clothes that last longer. So you'd have to, and that's an entire other class that I would give, but it's not that. So you'd have to understand how to buy clothes that would last longer if you do want to buy something new. You know, you would have to do a bit more research on seeing what companies are really sustainable and do not greenwash. And when I talk about greenwash, it's like the companies say that they're sustainable, but the manufacturing they use is not. So there's that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for you to be part of it would be to not collaborate to the 2 million billion like, you know, number we have out there every year made of like t-shirts. It just, you know, take your parents' clothes, hand down clothes. Like I would say 50%. And it's ironic because I work in an industry where it's all new clothing. So I would say 50% of my closet, if the clothes are not handed to me from working in the industry, I'm gonna wear repurposed clothing. I'm not gonna, even when I got married, I had 2 wedding dresses and they were both hand-me-downs. I didn't even want to buy a ridiculous, like crazy dress for $10,000. It just didn't, it has to start with you really committing to it and meaning it.
So if you were to build up your own brand, absolutely, with all the experience that you've gained over the years that you've worked in the business, how would you go about it so that it was the absolute most sustainable you could possibly make it?
Oh my God. Okay. So the first thing, I would have an insane mission statement. And I would have to stick to my mission statement. That's like the one thing I think makes and breaks brands today. People don't really care anymore. And you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're making clothing like this. Even my brand. Sometimes I'm like, how are we pretending that we're making clothing and people are going to buy this? But they're not. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick to a good mission statement, because I think that's what really drives you apart from all the other brands. And that's, your mission statement is really the one that's like the most, you know, the closest to your heart. And I feel sustainability is actually something that has no ego to it. It's for the greater good. So sustainable, the first thing I'd have to make sure is, you know, sustainable and ethical are 2 different things. And a lot of people get them mixed up. Many people put sustainable and ethical in the same category, although they're often seen together. But sustainable refers to brand impact on the environment, and ethical really relates to health and well-being and people and animals involved in the whole process of it. So I would have to try to find which one I'm more driven to do. So yeah, obviously, because we're talking about sustainable, a lot of companies too, side note, are no longer, and that's actually good news. No, like huge companies are no longer buying fur. Fur is like a thing of the past. People are not buying it, like huge stores. I'm talking about like in London, in Paris, in Italy, like even here, actually, Holt Renfrew doesn't buy fur anymore. There's like a lot of big companies that are not, you know, jumping into that anymore. So there's shifts. So I would definitely do that. And it's really important to define what sustainable is. So that would be part of my mission. So I would make sure that my brand identity and my philosophy are really, really, you know, cemented into that. So sustainable refers to the whole business and not just the clothes. So what I would do is, because I have this amazing mission where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be sustainable and da. I would basically just, you know, go all the way and actually create an eco-friendly brand that involves looking at the business as a whole. Like, you cannot do things without anybody kind of looking into it. That's a thing of the past. And this is a problem that our parents had a lot. They could say, you know, I'm doing this and this, but it was very hypocritical generation. Your parents, me, like 40-ish and more. Because we were like raised with like, oh, still having to work hard, but like wanting to hang out and like not, you know. So that's another thing. And I think that's really, really important, is basically, you know, making sure that from the way I light my office to the way I send and receive goods and material and processes, to how, you know, production happens. You know, because consumers are going to expect brands to be sustainable. If I'm going to say you know, they're going to expect me to be sustainable in every single way. So not just my clothing, but the way, you know, we ship the products, the way we wrap them, you know, and that's, you don't want to disappoint your the customers that are buying because they do believe in it and they do actually want to make a change. And just imagine, and it's happened, people more of my generation are the ones that have the money to be able to create these sustainable companies, but the younger generation is the one that's actually, you know, putting their, you know, putting their foot where their mouth is, putting their money where their mouth is. Yeah, exactly. Putting their money where the mouth is. So it's like, imagine you're younger and you're like, oh, you suck. Like, I can't believe you're making me buy this product. So that's the number one thing that I think the second thing that I would do. Careful in greenwashing. I told you guys that would make sure that, you know, I would go to the trusted factory. There's even something called an organization called QualSpec. So QUALSPEC. And that's a company that just goes and does like they basically do an audit, an independent audit that you can send to a factory so they can see exactly how they do, you know, how they take care of everything. That's if you have a clothing line. And for sustainable production too, I would want, you know, I would in general, anybody I deal with within my company, I would sit down and have a conversation with them, because people that are really passionate about sustainability will tell you right away and they'll get into it. And so I think that the main things is definitely my mission and how I back it up and everything else. And then when I'm going to design, that's another important thing. If I'm going to design, I'm going to make sure that I'm designing with very, you know, a timeless collection, which has no seasons and shifts in seasons. Like that's another huge problem we have in the industry. We went from, I think I would go to Paris every, like, I don't know how often. I would go 12 times a year. So that's almost once a month, but sometimes I would go twice. COVID has basically completely upside down turned it, because, you know, creating micro shipments. So now, like at the very beginning of the fashion industry, we are back down and starting to look at maybe just delivering clothes twice a year versus the 12 times a year that we're delivering clothes. That's a lot of different things. And I think that I would definitely do that and create 2 really good collections a year. And then hopefully clothing that'll last and they'll be good for me to be able to, you know, and not push out products all the time and say, hey, you know, yeah, I'm sustainable, but I'm going to push out so much clothes. And from the transport to the production to the manufacturing, it's all pollution. Like it's so sad to say there is no clothing that is 100% sustainable right now. It doesn't exist. You know, we work with some fabrics that we take bottles from the sea, but like near the factory. So there's not much of a transport, but even then, like once you've processed it, there's machines that have to do it. We fly it over, you know, planes, trains, ships leak, kill the little fish, super depressing. Anyways, so yeah, I think it would really be in the message that I would do.
So what do you think would happen if people just stopped making clothes for a whole year?
There's enough clothes to go around without, if people stop making clothes for a year, no one would notice for at least, and this is a fact, no one would notice for at least, for the clothing that we still have on this planet, it would, for us to run out of clothes, it would have to be 25 years. And but then you have to keep in consideration like the fashion, like, you know, newness and like trends. But the truth is we create trends, and everything by cycle comes back every 9 to 12 years. It's like a known fact. Like, you know, the 90s grunge is like really, like we see hints of it right now. It's super cool, but that comes with music and everything. So I think no one would even notice if nobody created. You know what we would do? We would save our planet just one step at a time. It would be a small move, but it would be an enormous move.
Well, I think on behalf of both of us, the Green Team newsletter, the Green Team in general, we'd like to thank you for helping us open up our little mini series.
Oh, it's the opening up of it. Amazing. I could have talked for like another hour about it. Like I have so many facts and stuff, but I didn't. I was like, oh, keep it short. Don't talk too much.
Maybe we could bring you back.
Anytime you
finale.
Oh, finale.
anytime you want me back, you got me.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Love you.
We love
Bye.